All my life. Riv, thanks for doing this, mate. It's an honor to have you on. Good to see you on the weekend, mate. How did you pull up after Saturday? I made the comment to Bubba that it was very nice of us to put you guys in the shade and us directly in the sun all day. I ended up thinking lose about 4 kilos after the day. How about you, mate? How'd you pull up? How'd you find it? First hit out for the year?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me, Chubby. Know you've been doing really good things around your podcast, so mate, glad to be a part of it. Mate, Saturday was awesome. Hats off to Hunter. I'm a big advocate for country footy, having lived up in Scone for 6 years. So for you guys to take some trial games and some junior coaching clinics out to the bush is a great initiative. So for us to be able to come up and just be a part of the day was unreal. Mate, good to get back up, sort of close to Scone at Singleton. Definitely wasn't rugby weather. She was nice and warm, but
Stinky, wasn't it?
Mate, yeah, she was warm. Our boys were certainly cooked afterwards, but mate, a pretty good day for us, to be honest. We definitely had some challenges going into it, just around some availability at the moment, but yeah, really pleased with what we're able to produce on the field, and lots of positives, lots of sort of steps in the right direction around a few different things we're trying to do this year. Obviously, with a few new coaching staff on board, that was always going to be the case. But yeah, a really good day. Singleton Rugby Club put on a pretty good show, and mate, I definitely sent Pardo a Warringah jersey for putting us over on the shade, mate.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my mum and my wife came with me, and we're all country people originally. I'm from Coffs Harbour, Kate's from Foster, and there's just something about country rugby clubs, mate, particularly a place like Singleton. It's kind of the heart and soul of rugby and the area in general. I found it. I really enjoyed the day as well, apart from the results at the end. But look, as you say, there's a lot to get out of it, mate. The whole point of this podcast is basically a coach education tool for young coaches and old coaches as well. So a lot of older coaches listen too. Could you give us a brief rundown of your playing history, and then how you began the journey to get to the Warringah head coaching position?
Yeah, sweet. My playing, I suppose my playing career was, mate, she's reasonably humble, but mate, born and bred in Northern Beaches, so grew up as a Warringah junior. Started there as a 10-year-old, and just sort of played through all those state championship years. Went away to boarding school for a couple of years, but always intended on coming back to Warringah to play Colts, which I did in '99. Left, was my first year of Colts. So I had a year of Colts at Warringah, and then jumped straight up into grade. Jumped up into grade early. Was definitely a bit of a wake up call for me, but had 2 years playing grade here at Warringah. Then I jumped across and had a year and a half at Randwick, which was a great experience. Thoroughly enjoyed my time over there. The second year I was there, I got an opportunity to go over to New Zealand and just play what was then the NPC. So I went down to Southland, spent some time there, and then came back to Australia and sort of finished off all my footy back at Warringah. So, mate, yeah, Warringah's been a massive part of my life, and in particular my sort of rugby life. I finished up playing grade footy end of 2010. My wife and I at that point decided, for no significant reason, but to move out of Sydney. We went and moved up to Scone for 6 years. Thankfully, I decided to keep playing footy when I went up there. I had a mate from school who was coaching up there, and the best decision I made for not only myself, but just for my family in terms of settling into country life. So, mate, had a really enjoyable 6 years playing country footy up there. Made some great mates. I'd always wanted to go and play country footy, and that's a genuine statement. It's not just because I moved to Scone, but I'd always had a desire to go and play a bit of bush footy. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. And to be honest, we're probably some of the most enjoyable years I had playing footy. Just so refreshing to go back to guys who just genuinely loved going to training, loved going out and playing footy. There was a real culture around country footy on, particularly on game day for home team.
Bus trips and
there was lots of bus trips, but the home team placed a huge amount of significance on hosting the away team, and it was just a really cool experience. So I had 6 years up in Scone, and then we moved back to Sydney in the middle of 2017, and obviously DC was head coach at Warringah, and I did have a sort of a connection to Darren through rugby circles, and at the back end of 2017, DC sort of reached out to see if I'd be interested in getting involved back at the club in terms of coaching, and I hadn't really given it a hell of a lot of thought before DC had approached me, but I was really keen to do it. Not only back at my home club, but to go and dip my toe into a bit of coaching and see A, whether I liked it, B, whether I was any good at it. So it was pretty exciting. So 2018 was my first year in terms of coaching. Jumped in with Darren, and Ben McCormack was sort of Darren's assistant coach at that point. So I jumped in with both those guys just in a skills sort of backs capacity, and I've just sort of I've continued on from there. So had a really enjoyable year with those two guys in 2018. DC obviously moved on, or DC and Benny moved on after 2018. Mark Gerard was head coach 2019. So I sort of took on a little bit more of a role with Mark in 2019, and then got the opportunity in 2020 to step into that head coach space, and just been chipping away ever since.
I've a few things to dive into there. What was it like working for Darren? He's obviously gone on to have a lot of success coaching the Waratahs now, turned them around. What was it like cutting your teeth under a guy like him?
Yeah, Darren. Well, first of all, I've said it a few times to a lot of people. I'm incredibly grateful for Darren giving me, the opportunity to get involved in coaching. Working with Darren was a real eye opener. My first real introduction to detail. Darren's meticulous around detail, and that certainly opened my eyes up to a completely different way of looking at footy and unpacking footy. So really enjoyed that aspect. I'm quite a structured, detailed person myself, so I quite enjoyed that. And then there's Darren, the character. A really down to earth, country boy himself, and very close to his roots. And the one thing that I love about Darren is what you see is what you get. He doesn't change. Doesn't change for anyone, and he's an incredibly empathetic person too, Darren. So it was an awesome experience. I also thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Benny McCormack in that year, and working with Ben as well, who's another.
He's a good coach as well. Very good coach.
Another really, really good coach. again, obviously a little bit different to Darren and the way DC did things, but it was a great experience coming in really raw and having two sort of contrasting guys, but two equally good guys to learn off and just to chat footy with.
Would he give you things to do and then sort of help you improve? Like, how was his teaching style with you? Because obviously you're new to coaching, got a long history in rugby, but as you know, coaching's very different to playing. Did he do anything to kind of help you progress formally, or was it a matter of you go and make your mistakes and learn along the way? Like, was there a process there?
No, I definitely think there was a process. I fully understand why probably he went that way. Like I was coming in really raw, and Darren definitely took a punt getting me involved, but I guess the process around it was that there was just a lot of open communication. So I'd sit down with DC, pre-training most sessions, and he'd walk through what he wanted out of the session, how he wanted me to facilitate my little blocks, and I just think as the year sort of grew on, he started to maybe get a little bit more confident in what I was doing, and he certainly sort of let the reins off a little bit towards the back end, but I suppose early on the process was just sort of open communication and just chatting through how he wanted things facilitated, and then just giving me the opportunity to go out and do that. And as the confidence for him grew, the reins loosened a little bit.
Was that the year that you guys won it?
No, so they'd won 2017. We got to the grand final 2018. So it was another really successful year, but well beaten by Sydney.
That was the uni team at the end. What was it like making the transition from assistant coach to the head coach? Obviously, you're at a club that you grew up at, that you have a long history at, and I imagine a lot of fondness for. Was there anything that surprised you in the step up? Did you feel ready for it at the time? How was that for you?
It's interesting. Like, and other people have asked me, like, were you ready to be a head coach? I don't know whether I was ready, but I was really keen to do it. So I suppose that suggests that I was ready to do it. The biggest thing from being an assistant coach to a head coach, I think at this level is just the amount of work, or the amount of extra work you do off the footy field. You've got to wear so many different hats as a Shute Shield coach, and there's just so many external challenges that quite often you don't have a huge amount of control over. So that was probably the biggest thing in terms of my transition, but I was never really daunted around the footy aspect of it. I was more really excited around the footy aspect and running a program. It was just that transition into how much more goes into being a head coach of a Shute Shield club, like I'm sure it does at a professional level as well. But it was just all the little things that went with it.
Helping people find housing, helping them find jobs.
Yep.
We got you a job. We got you a job. I don't want to do that job.
There's all those things. But I sort of embrace that a bit. It's sort of part of why I got into coaching in the first place. I really enjoy helping people, and I had a real desire to want to help people. So for me, it's just another little addition to that sort of theme, I guess.
We've just done the same coaching courses. One of the things that they talk about all the time is coaching philosophy. You got to work out your coaching philosophy. Have you sat down and done that? If so, do you mind sharing it? And do you think it's important?
And another good question, and something people toss up all the time. Have I developed a coaching philosophy? No, I don't, and I don't know how this is going to sort of sound, but I don't know that I truly understand what a coaching philosophy should look like.
I'm the same as you, just quietly.
And I also think, I'm into year 6 of coaching. I think I'd be pretty naive to think that I've nailed down a coaching philosophy that I think is going to carry me through for the rest of my coaching journey, whatever that looks like. I lean more on, I've got a strong set of values that are important to me, and I more lean on those in terms of what's really important for me. Like coaching philosophy, coaching style, like I've definitely got my view on how I like to play the game, and how I'd like teams that I'm involved with to play the game. But you've just got to be able to adapt as well, because there's so many factors that can influence how you want to play the game. Have you got the athletic profile to play the style of footy you want? If not, well, is my coaching philosophy going to work for that particular group? So there's obviously that ability to be able to adapt and constantly evolve around that. So I guess to answer your question, no, I haven't formed a really firm coaching philosophy. I've got a set of values that I try and stay really true to, and then I'm just trying to keep challenging myself to learn just different aspects of the game, and hopefully one day I find the miracle formula that just works wherever I am. And but yeah, I'm I guess that's my answer around philosophy.
I think it's a good answer, because I've heard a lot of people talk about philosophies, and really what they're talking about is a way to treat people. And I think if you have strong values and you run through how you communicate with your team, your staff, how you drop players, how you deal with the community, through that filter of, does this stand up to my values? It's probably a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I find it easier to unpack in my own mind. Like philosophy, to be honest, philosophy is a scary word for me. Like genuinely, I don't know. I just find it easier to just to unpack in my own mind my strong set of values, and just staying as true as I possibly can be to them.
What keeps you going through the tough days? So sorry for cutting you off, mate.
No, you're right.
Yeah. What keeps you going through the tough days? Why do you coach? What is it that keeps you going? Why do you do it?
I suppose, why do I coach first? Obviously, like all of us, I'm a rugby tragic, passionate about the game. Started playing it as a 4-year-old, and rugby's been the one constant in my life. So I love the game first and foremost. So to be involved in it now in the capacity I am is unreal. I probably answered a little bit before. One of the main motivators for me to get involved in coaching was just a desire to want to help people. And it was funny. I was tossing up a few different things around the time that we moved back from Scone, which sort of coincided with the opportunity to start coaching. Like I was thinking about, which was completely left field, maybe going into social work or something like that. But this sort of coaching opportunity ticked a couple of boxes. It maintained a connection into the sport I loved, and also was an avenue for me to go and help people. So that's sort of the main motivator for me, and my why. Why do I coach? Well, I get the opportunity to help people and hopefully have a really positive influence. What keeps me going? I guess it's just leaning back on to why I'm doing it. I definitely have a really strong support network in terms of my family, who who sort of motivate me to keep me going through the tough days. And as you would well know, you definitely have them as as a coach. And so yeah, I constantly just try and refer back to why I'm doing what I'm doing, and just lean on my family support, and that generally sort of turns a tough day back into a good day pretty quickly.
It's That was a great quote from one of your assistant coaches, who I won't name, and I know listens to this. He goes, "There isn't a single assistant coach in the Shute Shield that's doing their day job properly." I'm like, that's so true. Because if you're doing coaching properly, it's very hard to do your other things properly.
Mate, 100%. And I have a huge amount of respect for my assistant coaches having sort of lived that full-time work and assistant coach space. It's bloody challenging. So
Mate, you've got some cracking guys there. Can we talk about them a little bit? Maybe give them a little bit of a plug. As
sure.
a head coach, sorry. How do you manage your staff? Do you give them certain areas of the game and they've got autonomy? Like how does that work for you? Or you'll say, I want to work on this week, and just let them go at it. What's your process with working with and managing your staff?
Yeah, so 100%. I got a great group at the moment, and it was important. It was important for me to surround myself with like-minded, aspirational coaches, and I genuinely think I've done a reasonably good job with that over the last couple of years. Cam Treloar's obviously now kicked on to be a head coach at West Harbour, which is awesome. So this year saw a little bit of transition coaching wise. I suppose with who I've maintained from previous years, Nick Pivot-Giblett, who's an awesome guy from Melbourne, who just super aspirational, super passionate about coaching, about defence. So Piv's into year 3 now, up here with me, looking after all of our defence. Obviously, Tree moving on was an opportunity to bring someone fresh into that forward space, and been super lucky to have Scott Fardy join us this year, and another great connection for Warringah, which they've done quite well historically in terms of incorporating past players into coaching positions. So
it's pretty handy pickup there, mate.
Yeah, really pleased to have Fards on board. So a great Warringah man, a Warringah junior. Obviously played a lot of senior footy here before he obviously kicked on to bigger and better things. But Fards back in Australia, living in Newcastle, but back in Australia, was obviously keen to continue on from his sort of brief coaching stint in Japan. So yeah, Fards has come on board and looking after our forwards and breakdown this year. I'll sort of come back to Fards, but and then Sammy Lane, who's obviously from just down the road in Manly territory, but I got an introduction to Laney. Well, Laney actually reached out at the beginning of the year and was just sort of wondering what opportunities sort of may pop up. And I'd always had a huge amount of respect for Laney as a footballer, and obviously comes from reasonably good stocks when you talk coaching with his old man. So when caught up with Laney, and I was really confident from the first sort of time I'd sat down with him that he was going to be a really good fit and a really good breath of fresh air for us in terms of a back's perspective. I'd sort of been looking after that space for 5 years, so I think it was really timely to have someone new in that space. So yeah, Laney's been a great addition, and then just sort of rounding out our group is the great Jeff Tuvey, who again Tuv's joined us a couple of years ago. has been phenomenal.
What does he do? What does he do for you guys?
Yeah, so we've sort of morphed a role where Tubes is comfortable now, just around some contact skill, and I actually like using him in and around our forwards in terms of just in terms of their catch pass skill, and their pull pass, and a lot of that's really relevant to rugby league and how their forwards sort of play at the line. So we've morphed a role for Tubes where he's really comfortable, and we genuinely feel we get good value. But in terms of just having Jeff Tuvey, the guy around our club, is phenomenal. You wouldn't meet a more down-to-earth, humble, committed bloke than Tubes. He lives conveniently just down the road from Rat Park, and I was a bit hesitant. Or the only thing I was hesitant around Tubes was just how much he may or may not have been around. But mate, I can say in that, well, this is his third year now too, and mate, in the 2 years prior, he's probably missed 4 training sessions, and they've generally been when he's been involved with the women's state of origin, or had something sort of he had to do for Fox Sports. But mate, he doesn't miss a session. He gets to training at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he loves a game day. He'll get there for 4th grade, and mate, he just loves the connection back to footy and just being around a club. So yeah, I've got an awesome group of coaches, and probably apart from Tubes, where the other 4 of us are all on a similar journey in terms of being young and reasonably inexperienced in terms of coaching, but highly aspirational and driven to do well. So yeah, it's a great group to work with. How do I manage them? Obviously, we've all got our spaces within the program. I'm really big on giving those guys autonomy to go and facilitate their program the way they want to do it. Obviously, we have to have connection around our identity and how we want to play the game, and make sure there's alignment between those things, and then how they connect their program into that. But I'm a big believer that I've got them there for a reason. Let them go and do their thing. So yeah, we obviously connect and talk a lot, but mate, yeah, I'm more than comfortable with them sort of running their program and doing their thing. And yeah, and to be honest, I think it's the best way that you can go and learn.
But being allowed to make your own mistakes is so valuable.
Absolutely.
And then having someone to sort of help you talk it through, like a head coach or a mentor, you can go, geez, I didn't do that well today. Oh, what can you do better? And having that relationship I reckon that's a really good way to learn as an assistant coach. Yeah,
and you've got to I find in this space as a head coach, you've got to be a really good listener. You've got to be prepared to listen, and yeah, so I enjoy talking to my assistant coaches around footy, around their ideas, around how they want to do things. So and there's great learning points for me that come out of that as well. So yeah, you've got to be able to be a good listener. What makes Warringah a special club? I've played against guys there for years, and you've got guys like the Holmes brothers who play 6,000 games for the club and keep going back. And there's guys, it seems to me, looking as an outsider looking in, guys very rarely leave Warringah. What is it about that community, that club, that keeps people coming back? Yeah, it's a really good one, and then without going down the culture path, because that's another tricky word. I always say to people that I genuinely believe the environment that I stepped into as a colt and as a young kid in grade, this club has been able to somehow harness that environment and just maintain maintain the same sets of values and things that the club feel are important, and they've just been able to somehow pass that on from, I don't know, you don't say generation, but just from group to group. And I think what's also as important is the club's confidence and the club's focus to keep integrating past players into coaching positions and board positions. And I think it just constantly keeps a really close connection to the past. What makes the club, what makes it the club that it is, it's always the people. And again, like it's the connection, and I'm sure a lot of Shute Shield clubs are in the same boat, but the connection to past players from generations gone by who are still down here volunteering and still just doing whatever they can to help out. Definitely keeps the club grounded too, I think. So it's definitely the people. This club's always been a club that's enjoyed themselves away from footy, and it's a big part of a rugby program, and a big part of a club is the capacity to enjoy yourself along the way.
How do you manage that as a head coach? Because obviously now the expectations with Shute Shield have gone through the roof as a result of Stan and how competitive the competition is generally. So you got to take it seriously. But as you said, you got to have fun as well.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's tricky. And particularly the environment we're in, where every Shute Shield club's now trying to implement a as close to a semi-professional program as they can, but obviously doing it in an amateur space where 95% of our players all either go to work or go to uni 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they facilitate their footy outside of that, and don't get a lot in return. So it's really challenging around just how much you can squeeze out of players. I'm a pretty conservative, boring bloke, Chubby. So how do I manage that? I'm really conscious around my leadership group and making sure that I've got the right mix of people who'll sort of drive a lot of that. And you got to. So I work really closely. I try to work really closely with my leadership group around how we schedule things into our program that are going to stimulate the guys and obviously give them some time away from the intensity of footy. And my leadership group's really important around that. You've also got to get an understanding of your group and when you can really squeeze a bit out of them and when you have to sort of back off a little bit. So that's important in terms of your understanding of your group. But yeah, it's a tricky balance, and Warringah's a really competitive club, and there's high expectation internally, and there's also high expectation externally from our community, and we're so lucky that we are so well supported by our local community, and there's so many active groups that really drive that for us. But with that comes expectation, right? They want to come down and have their 12 beers on the hill, and they want to see Warringah winning. So it's a super competitive club, and I don't know that I get that balance right, but again, it's just something that you've got to adapt to and evolve with, and just try and find just different ways of stimulating the group, because it's it's a long grind, a Shute Shield season.
It is. Compared to the previous 2 years, having 18 or 19 games or whatever it was last year was a long grind.
Yeah.
Just on the rats, I've copped a fairly good amount of sprays from the hillbillies over a number of years.
Yeah.
It's I always like playing there. I know a lot of guys don't like playing there from other clubs, which I'm sure is pleasing to hear as a Warringah coach or player, but I've always loved playing there. There's a good feel about the place when you go in there. Don't know what it is.
Mate, it's awesome. And again, you sort of you take your hat off to a lot of these external groups who who drive and facilitate a lot of that community support for us. But you have a deep understanding that they're passionate Warringah people, and most of them are people that have played at the club. But a home game at Rat Park's an awesome day, and when the sun's out, the hill's full. The hillbillies are vocal, and the grandstand's full. It's a great day down there, and it's one of the true rugby grounds left in the Shute Shield. It's just got a great feel to it. So
I couldn't agree more.
We're super fortunate, and it's sort of talked about every year of making sure that that Rat Park's a bit of a fortress and a place that people don't enjoy coming to. So that the players are really conscious of that, and they take a huge amount of pride in playing at home. So,
mate, what's your relationship like with failure? And I'll explain what I mean by failure. It's not necessarily losing or completely failing. It's more making mistakes, trying things, learning from them, and adjusting. Have you got a relationship with failure? What's your take on that? And do you have any mistakes that you've made that have set you up for future successes, or things that you've taken from those failures?
It's an interesting one, and I'm a big I stand really firm around and it's I'll sort of get into it, but like there's a phrase of just no fear of failure, and that's really tricky, because failure can be a million different things to a million different people. But I think if you're scared to fail, you're not going to challenge yourself, and you're not going to take yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think in order to be successful in any aspect of life, you've got to be prepared to take yourself out of your comfort zone and do things that are uncomfortable. And if you fear failure, I genuinely think you're not going to be in a position to be able to go and do that. So what's my relationship like? Like I have to continually just sort of remind myself of that. I am a I don't know how to describe it, but I take things really, really personally. I take things really hard. So I guess there's always that little constant battle of failure and just dealing with that internally, because again, like failure for everyone's going to look a little bit different. One thing that I'm not afraid of doing now is making mistakes. Mistakes are part of life, and when you look at a footy field and all the complexities, all the aspects that go into a rugby game, mistakes are going to happen. And I myself am not afraid to make mistakes. So I've got to allow my players to feel the same sort of feeling around that. I don't want them to fear a mistake is going to be frowned upon, or
Have you always had that? Was that something you've acquired over the last couple of years?
It's probably something I've just learnt over my time as a coach, because as a player, and I'm sure you've been the same. There's nothing worse than making a mistake. Like, and you know, it takes a certain individual who can just deal with that and move on really quickly. I was never one of those guys when I was a player. So it's definitely something that I've had to learn, but you know, I make mistakes every day, but I believe it's the capacity to own your mistakes, to be willing to own them, first and foremost, and then as long as you can take something away from your mistake, then you know that's a positive for me. And you know, you sort of relate that back to your players. Mistakes are going to happen. As long as I try to drive that mentality that as long as your next involvement is a positive one, and whatever that looks like, whether it's just getting up off the ground and transitioning, you know, really hard to your next involvement, like that's a positive action. So yeah, I'm just big on that. Mistakes are going to happen. You know, just make sure your next involvement's a really positive one.
How do you filter it through your brain to not take it so personally? And I'm asking for purely selfish reasons, because I also take it personally and I take it hard. Something I've been trying to do lately is look at a situation analytically and go, okay, that's the problem. How do I fix it? Rather than going, oh, you fucked up, you're a loser, or you know, or someone, or the players think you're stupid, or whatever it is. But to look at it analytically and objectively and go, okay, there's a solution, just fix it, and don't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
Do you have a similar kind of process, or how do you filter things?
I don't know. I guess it's hard. When they're rugby related mistakes, and you know, whether they're my mistakes out on a training field or it's players' mistakes, I have the capacity to be able to look at the mistake and I'm very solution based around that. So there's a mistake. Well, what's the solution? And just really lean on the solution to pull you out of the negative headspace around the mistake. You sort of put your other hat on as a head coach, and you know, there's so much emotion that's involved with being a coach. There's emotion for players. There's so many emotional decisions around a rugby program and you know, a football team. So it's probably the emotional mistakes that are, or the mistakes that carry emotion with them that are harder to handle. But again, they're all just really good learning experiences. And you know, I suppose how do I regulate those mistakes? You know, I suppose I always just lean back on my strong set of values that we sort of touched on at the start of the podcast. And you know, as long as I'm aligned to those strong set of values, then you know, is it a mistake, or am I just staying true to myself around that? So I don't know whether that answered your question or not.
Yeah, no, it does. That's
yeah.
great.
So I guess from a rugby practical perspective, very solution based. When it's got emotion attached to it, it becomes really challenging, and that's probably where you start to take it a bit more personally, and you probably take it a little bit harder around the emotional stuff. But yeah, I just sort of, if I can lean back on my strong set of values and I'm aligned there, then you know, I can move on.
Great answer, mate. Do you have any mentors or people that you speak to regularly? We talked a little bit about DC, but do you have any coaching mentors? I know you're quite friendly with a lot of the Shute Shield coaches.
Yeah, it's really important. And coaching and in particular a head coach can be a bit of a lonely space sometimes. You know, as people probably probably wouldn't understand that or necessarily agree with it. But I reckon it can be quite lonely and quite isolating sometimes. So it's really important to have a good support network around you. I've been really fortunate, just not only since I started coaching, but certainly over my time sort of playing, where I've come into contact with some really good people and some good coaches, and there's definitely people that I'll lean on and I'll talk to, and John McKee's been a really good sounding board for me at different times. I had John as a coach when he was here at Warringah, and he's a great man, John, and always stayed in contact with him. In more recent times, Tubes has been unreal to just talk to around the whole head coaching life and different aspects of it. There's a few other people that I definitely talk to around rugby, but I would highly recommend for certainly any young coach to have a really strong support network and some really good people around you who are going to be able to give you good advice, and they're going to be able to give you honest advice.
Yeah, I'd agree completely, mate. From a few perspectives, like I think I'm only in my second, maybe third year of coaching, and having some guys to speak to has sped my progression up dramatically. And then having other people that you trust to speak to, where you can talk over things and go and work out problems and solutions, has also been really helpful. Even just as an assistant coach, I think it's very valuable.
Yeah, it's probably not something that I do particularly well. And part of it, like, DC is someone I know that I could ring whenever I wanted to, but you're also conscious of,
you don't want to waste his time or
Darren,
chew his ear off too much.
People have got their own, their own coaching life going on. They've got their own things going on. So I'm certainly conscious of that factor as well. But Darren's another one that I know I can ring at any point. And there's a couple other people that I talk to regularly who are really really good sounding boards and really well experienced in the coaching space, and they're incredibly giving of their time, and it's definitely beneficial. So if you're jumping into a coaching journey, get yourself a good support network, and find those people who are going to be open and honest with you.
How do you reflect on 2023?
2023 coming up.
Oh, sorry, 2022. Sorry, 2024 on my brain already. Last year.
Last year was, it was a great year. It was great to get out of COVID and obviously get back to a full season of footy. From a Warringah perspective, just frustrating. Inconsistency probably killed us in the end, and it's something that I've had to reflect back on, because I sort of look at, I take 2021 probably out of the equation, because we were cut short halfway, and we were sitting in a reasonably strong spot in 2021. 2020 again, like parking COVID as a factor, but we got to a season, and we were in good shape. We had a good group, but we were inconsistent again, and that ultimately reflected where we finished. Last year was just frustrating. We had such a good group, and we had the capacity to play some really exciting rugby, and we had some great wins, and but then it was just that element of inconsistency that really cost us. So I've really reflected on that personally, because if I look at that inconsistency piece over the last 3 years, and the one common denominator there is me. So that whole self-reflection around that, and looking at ways that I can be more consistent in what I'm doing, and more consistent in some of our practices, then hopefully that will have a positive impact on the group this year. Because I genuinely believe that we have got a group who are talented enough and competitive enough to win this competition. We just need to be consistent. And if we can find that this year, I have no doubt that we'll be challenging at the back end of the year. And that's probably a brave statement, but I genuinely believe that. So
you got to risk it to get the biscuit, mate. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to be confident in what you're doing. And it has been a really good experience for me over the last sort of 4 or 5 months to really reflect on that consistency thing. And I've already noticed a change in a few things that I'm doing, and being a bit more consistent around that. And hopefully that's going to have a really positive reflection on the group. And we can string more wins and losses, and we'll be swinging at the end.
What do you think are the key elements required to win a tournament?
Oh, yeah. Tricky, just in the sense that I obviously haven't been in an environment at this level that's been able to achieve that. I was back in Sydney the end of 2017, but just sort of back at the club as a spectator and someone who just enjoyed seeing what they achieved that year. 2018, 2019, being involved in a coaching capacity and getting to 2 grand finals and losing those, I definitely think teaches you a lot. What do I think's the key? You definitely need to keep your group fit, and your best players available as consistently as you can. You definitely need a little bit of luck along the way, and whether that's through injury, whether that's through a couple of refereeing decisions that might decide a game. Given the competitive nature of the competition at the moment, the reality is that there's going to be a couple of decisions that are going to decide a game. So, you probably need a little bit of luck there, but there's definitely the old saying, you create your own luck. And hopefully around that consistency piece, you're creating that more often than you're not. What else do you need? I honestly believe you need a really strong support group around you, which I'm really confident that we've got this year. Definitely with my coaching staff. And I'm going to shoot myself because I left a really important piece of our puzzle out when we spoke about my coaching group in Matty McGoldrick, who apologies, Goldie, if you're listening to Chubby's
podcast. If he's still listening.
So obviously, just digressing a little bit, we obviously lost Needsy this year as our scrum coach, which was really gutting for the club. Needsy had been unreal and done an awesome job here in terms of what we're doing around set piece. So it was really important for us to go and fill that space with someone who we thought was going to be able to sort of to take off where Needsy had sort of left us. And Goldie was floating around, and I've known Goldie for a long time, and a great guy, a great coach in his own right, and was really looking to specialize in an area. So got Goldie involved looking after our set piece. So digressed a little bit, but it was important to encompass Goldie in that wider support network. And I'm really confident in that group, and I know we've got the IP to give us the rugby that we the rugby knowledge. And so yeah, that's sort of they'd be the key things for me. If you can keep your best group fit, you're going to be in a good position. Get a bit of luck along the way. Create that by being consistent and just being surrounded by a good group. The other thing, I'm a big believer in having a really strong group of leaders within your playing group. And again, I think we're really fortunate here that we've got some unreal leaders here who are good humans. They're good footy players, but they're competitive, and they're really conscious of the influence that they have on the group, and they take a huge amount of pride in that. So I genuinely think that's an important aspect of a rugby program and generating success.
It's funny. It's so much more meaningful coming from a fellow player than it is coming from a coach.
Absolutely.
So much more meaningful.
Yeah. 100%.
Mate, beautiful. Couple more questions and I'll get you out of here, sir. Do you do much personal development on the rugby front? Like, if you want to, like you said at the start, you want to look at learning different areas of the game. How do you attack that? Obviously, it's hard during the season, but when you have time, how do you actually go and look at different elements of coaching, life, rugby, whatever you want to do with that?
Yeah, no, I'm really big around PD. Have been as soon as I dip my toe into coaching, I'm definitely self-aware that I'm not the best. I don't have all the answers, and the only way I'm going to find them is if I go and be proactive in that space. So I've always done bits and pieces. I really enjoy going into different environments and obviously interacting with different coaches and seeing how different programs, different codes, facilitate their footy. I've done lots of cool things here, just domestically. With rugby, I've done some stuff with a couple of different NRL clubs, with Manly and the Panthers. So just being able to open doors there and getting to know people like Ivan Cleary and Des Hasler have been unreal, and people that I know I could pick up the phone tomorrow and have a yarn with them. I did a great trip at the end of last year. You sort of talk about getting out of your comfort zone. I decided I was going to head overseas for a month and on a PD trip. So I had a connection to Mike Blair and Gregor Townsend. So
oh wow, fantastic!
I had to pick up the phone and go and ring them and sort of half introduce myself, and but they were so accommodating, and so I went over for a month and spent some time at Edinburgh with Mike Blair, and then had some time with Gregor and Scotland through their autumn test series, which was unreal to go and obviously go to the Northern Hemisphere and just experience what they're doing with footy at the moment. And there's no question that Northern Hemisphere rugby is in a really strong space at the moment, and they're playing some really exciting footy across lots of different competitions and countries. So that was an unreal experience. And it's interesting the people you meet while you're over there and the different doors that open. And so yeah, I'm big on PD. I'm a real sort of practical person and a practical learner. So I'm not a great sort of reader of material and sort of content. So things like going and actually visiting and being present and practical around those sorts of things is what I enjoy most.
Firstly, I'm going to try that with my missus. Babe, I'm going on a month-long PD trip to Europe. Sorry you can't come. I love that. Did she go with you?
No, she didn't, but I will. I'll give my wife a rap. She's an incredible support for me in terms of what I do. But she constantly reminds me that I went on a holiday, so I'm constantly reminding her that it was a work trip.
Yeah. Mate, I'm definitely going to do something like that. One thing I want to bring up with these podcasts, and something that I've found very important in my own life, is the subject of self-care. We talked a little bit about it at the Narrabeen camp that we were at, and how important it is to look after yourself so you can help other people in terms of exercising, getting away from sport, spending time with your family, all those sorts of things. Do you do much away from footy to take care of yourself? Is that something that you're across, or is it something you need to be better at?
No, definitely better. I probably don't do that whole self-care thing particularly well. I've definitely got my things that I enjoy doing. Like I like staying active. I like exercising, so I'm definitely conscious around that. But it is so important to find ways and avenues and things that will take you away from footy at different times. And I'm definitely not particularly good at that. I find myself just completely immersed in my role, and I guess a part of that is, sort of ties back into that that space that I'm in terms of my aspirations and where I want to go. And I'm probably not doing it the most productive way in terms of just investing as much time as I can into it. But it's something that I definitely think I could do better. And there was a funny story I heard recently about I don't know whether I could drop names here, but it was it was two sort of high profile coaches, and one was an assistant, and that assistant coach told the head coach that he just needed to go and find himself a hobby, because he was too intense. And but it's interesting. I think you need something away from footy that you can just go and switch off, and just give yourself a mental break more than anything else. I don't know. For me, I'm really conscious of the amount that my wife and my kids sacrifice, for me to do what I do. And I as you would understand, you miss out on a lot with particularly with your kids and their sport. So I'm really conscious of that, and making sure that I spend as much time with them as I can. And that extends to, my mum and dad are really good supporters of mine and what I do. So, conscious of just spending time with them. And but it's all the things that, I love getting down the beach and getting in the water. And surfing's probably the one thing that I really love doing, and just being out in the water. And just spending time with it's interesting, when Tree got the head coach role at West Harbour, and Tree and I have been mates since school. So Tree sort of said, mate, we're gonna make sure that we get in the water a couple of times a week, and just go and have a surf. And
have you seen him yet?
It's gonna, Matt, we haven't been in the water yet. But it's probably the one thing that I kick myself. Like I just know how good I feel after being out in the water and going for a surf and a paddle. And I constantly find myself using time as an excuse not to go and do it. But I need to find better practice in terms of looking after myself. But it is definitely important, because the most challenging thing in this role is the emotional and mental drain. You put so much into it. You've got to find ways to be able to recharge your batteries.
It's funny. My old mates that I used to play with sort of through to 2015, 2016, sort of hear me talk about the time it takes, even just as an assistant coach. Like, I don't have to do the stuff that you guys have to do. And they're like, well, you're only training twice a week and then games on Saturdays. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, that's not how it works now.
Yeah, no, it's hard, and until people live and breathe it, they and understandably so, they don't have a true appreciation of it. But yeah, it's a huge investment, but it's an investment that we all enjoyed doing, and yeah, but it is that whole self-care. It's really important, and it's important for any aspect of life, right? People in the corporate world who invest a huge amount of their time and energy, you know, and I it's funny. I don't know whether I've got a lot of mates in the corporate world who there seems to be a lot that's facilitated through different companies around self-care and mental health and all those things. So I think there's, you know, for the corporate world are certainly leaps and bounds ahead of potentially the sporting world in terms of maybe that whole self-care space. So it's definitely important, and it's you know, it's really relevant in today's society.
It's a funny one. I heard a great quote a while ago going, coaches and business people will work, coaches and bosses will work themselves to death to help other people, but they won't do anything to help themselves.
Yeah, which is true. It's definitely true.
Mate, couple of rapid fire questions. Really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for your time. You said you don't read much. Do you listen to podcasts? Do you watch documentaries? Do you have anything like that you'd recommend to us?
I'm not a great reader. I'm a terrible reader, in fact. So I couldn't tell you the last book that I finished. I am reading a book at the moment, and it's a bit of a running joke here at amongst the boys at the moment, because it's a really important book that's really relevant to a few things that we're doing this season. And I told the boys I was going to have it finished by Christmas, and I'm still going. So
what's the book?
It's called Tobruk. So yeah, it's a war-based book.
Yeah.
So terrible reader. I love a podcast. Love sporting podcasts. Obviously, I'll listen to any sort of podcast. Love true crime podcasts. Big true crime podcast guy. Love documentaries. Any of like those Drive to Survive, Full Swing. The Michael Jordan one. Really love some of the docos that are floating around at the moment. Really looking forward to watching the next Netflix one that will come out. Hopefully, I think it'll come out next year, sometime around the Six Nations, which will be really cool. So, anything, mate, anything sport, I'll listen to it. I'll watch it.
Mate, I'm not a golfer. Always hated golf. Never done it once. Hated it. Watching Full Swing makes me want to take up golf.
Mate, I was the same. Formula One, like absolutely
great too.
No interest in car racing. Like, couldn't think of anything worse. Mate, Drive to Survive. I've started watching Grand Prix.
I figure if I take up golf now, 7 days a week, maybe in 10 years' time, I'll be on the PGA or the Live Tour. Hey, what's a common mistake you see from young coaches?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I don't know whether I could confidently answer that one, Chubby. I probably I probably put myself in that mold, to be honest. This is my 6th year of coaching.
Actually, just to give you a little bit of time to think, do you look back on how you were coaching in year 1, year 2, year 3, and look at yourself now and go, I'm so much better than I was 4 years ago? Like, do you feel like you keep getting better? Yeah,
definitely. And I think the reality, if I wasn't, then I wouldn't still be here, because it is a results driven, cutthroat sort of job that we're ultimately in. So if I didn't have the confidence of the club, or they didn't think that I was the right person for the job, I certainly wouldn't be here. So, but yeah, I'm confident in myself that I'm certainly getting better every year that I'm coaching. Not necessarily a mistake, but I guess one bit of advice that I'd have for a young coach is just stay true to yourself and be honest. They're probably two big things that not that I've learnt through mistake, but I just think they're two really strong things to stand by in terms of coaching, and you'll certainly make your life a hell of a lot easier as a coach if you can be true to yourself and just be honest.
Are there any common characteristics you've seen from the great coaches that you've been around? Your Ivan Clearys, your Des Haslers, your Darren Colemans. Is there anything that they all have in common?
I think all of those guys in their own right are really empathetic, caring people. Obviously, Darren, I know quite well. I've spent a fair bit of time with Des. Ivan, I don't know particularly well, but I don't think you can create the success that Penrith have created, and probably the close knit bond that club have without being an empathetic person and a caring person. So yeah, I think empathy would be a common characteristic amongst all those guys. I think hardworking too. I know for a fact Darren's got a huge work ethic, as does Des, and from the time I spent with Ivan to work ethic's something that sort of resonates across all those three guys. So they're probably and they're probably things that resonate really well with me too. So
it's funny, isn't it? You very rarely hear of anyone successful that doesn't work their ass off.
Oh, absolutely, and it's sort of one thing that I know I can comfortably sort of lean on in my own journey. I pride myself on working hard. I was no different as a footy player. I was, and I sort of relate where I'm at now to where I was as a footy player. I was incredibly aspirational, and had a little bit of success through sort of age group, but I knew I wasn't the best, and I knew the only way I was ever going to achieve what I wanted to achieve was by working hard. And I'm trying to approach my coaching with the same mentality.
Love it, mate. Last question. If you could tell 18-year-old Rivo one thing, what would it be?
Oh, Jesus. Is this footy based or just
any direction you want to take it, mate?
Take your opportunities. Yeah, that'd be the advice I'd tell my 18-year-old self.
Fantastic way to end, mate. Thank you so much for this. I truly appreciate it. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chubby. Awesome to jump on, mate.